All right. Welcome, everyone. It's Frank Klesitz for Keeping It Real. Thanks for being here. I apologize for the delay, having some tech difficulties. But I got a great interview for you today. We're going to talk about how to sell 450 homes this year. Thanks for being here. And Greg, my co-host, might be running a little bit late. He'll be hopping on here, but it's just me for right now. Like I said, my name is Frank Klesitz with Viral Marketing. The show is called Keeping It Real, and you're going to meet Spring Bengtzen here in a minute. It's actually going to be a really good interview. Spring and I had a conversation back about 2016, and she was about ready to get out of the business, very frustrated with trying to build a team and trying to get her lead generation figured out. And then something clicked. And this year, 450 homes will likely be sold. Spring, how many have you sold this year already?
265.
265. If you look at your lead pipeline and how well the market's going, 450 seems conservative of where it'll end up, most likely.
Yeah.
Okay. Yep. As of August 4th or so of this interview, August 5th. So Spring, let's just get started. Oh, actually, no, I have some housekeeping things. I apologize. Hang on. So if you guys want to watch recordings of Keeping It Real, you go to keepingitreal.com and you can see all the previous replays of all of our shows. Okay. In addition to that, on keepingitreal.com, if you put your email address in, you'll get notified of any updates about the show. We won't email you about anything else. And you can also watch the show on the Real Geeks Facebook page. It's available there. And if you prefer, it's also up on Apple Podcasts. So you can download it and you can watch it that way as well. So that's how you can watch more of the show. And we have shows going back for years of interviewing top agents around the country. In Spring, you are now one of them. I mean, congratulations.
How awesome is that, right?
Very awesome.
Mm-hmm. It's been a journey for sure.
So I want you to, let's relate to the audience a bit. I want you to tell me where you were at about 5 years ago, maybe?
Yeah.
Where you were seriously considering getting out of the business. Tell us kind of where you started, how you got up to that point, and let's focus the story about where you were at the kind of the depths of your struggle.
Yeah. So I'd been in the business at that time, roughly about 12, 13 years. I'd gone from independent agent to having a small team. And I was just in that messy middle, like the conversation you're referring to, you and I met in LA, and I came to you and I was just like, Frank, I'm exhausted. Like my expenses are high. I'm looking at my P&L. I could ultimately sell real estate on my own and make just as much money without the headache of these agents coming and going and not taking care of the leads and et cetera. And you were like, I love it because you came to me, we were like, Spring, it's just so simple. You do this. And I thought, oh, Frank, oh my heavens, there's no way, but fast forward, like a year later, you called me and said, hey, our conversation we had, I'm going to do a full class 6 months. I'll walk you through exactly how to do it. And so I signed up, and honestly, that is what changed my business.
So the conversation was around recruiting.
Yep.
Is that you were burning the candle at both ends, doing what at that time?
Well, I was still in production. I had a smaller team. So I had the expectation everybody should be a rock star, which those of you guys that are team owners know that that's not the case. And I was constantly either bringing people in and then they would transition out. So I didn't really have that bench of agents, but it was just a lot. So I was selling, I was having a turnover. I'd get somebody in production and then they could think they could do it on their own. It was just that messy, like constant flow of agents in, agents out, and I was still selling homes.
What was your original value proposition of why? Because I think your team was like, what, 2, 3, 4 people at the time?
Yeah. I trained them. I had Rookie of the Year on my team every year. I gave them leads and everything. The thing is that they would get to where they were selling in our market 40, 50 homes a year, which is a lot, and know what they're doing and then say, hey, I don't want to necessarily pay this split. I love you, Spring, but I'm out.
That's pretty good. So, you would get agents that would work for you to sell that many homes. Did you provide them leads? Did you train them? What was your model of how you got them up to speed?
Yeah, so all of it. So provided them leads, did a lot of training, accountability, just worked one-on-one. And we used to make the joke that they were spring grown. It was such a small team that I could go on their appointments with them or they'd shadow me or whatnot, but it really wasn't a sustainable model. And that was a conversation you and I had of how much one person would leave, it would take away 40 to 50 transactions a year, which is a lot, And so I really couldn't just have a bunch of mini springs. We had to expand it to make it to where if somebody did leave, it didn't kill my business.
And I think the other thing was too, is that when you stripped out, when you looked at your profit, it was just all from your personal production.
Yeah, 100%.
And you weren't even making money off the agents.
No. And I think that's what I think a lot of smaller teams are in that. Like I have a bunch of friends that have smaller teams right now, and I look at them like a majority of what's happening is your production is paying those bills, is what you're making, and the agents are paying the bills. And so you really have to go past that next level in order to hit those profit margins, in my opinion.
So you were in a tight spot. You know, you're burning the candle on both ends with going out and working buyers and sellers. Your time is very involved, like training and coaching the agents that leave you.
Yeah. Yeah.
And if you were to stop buying and bring your own production, there wouldn't be any money left over to pay your bills. So you're kind of like painted yourself into a corner, right? Like financially a bit, sounds like. And I think a lot of agents that are building a team or want to maybe have like a level of some type of passive income by selling real estate get stuck there, which is exactly where you were. Yeah. All right. Now I'd like you to walk the audience through like as best and with detail for the rest of the interview today, like kind of step by step, line up the dominoes with maybe the tasks and even some of the mindset changes you did to get to where you're at, because you no longer work with buyers or sellers now. Is that correct?
Correct.
And how many agents are on your team or that work for you?
We have roughly about 30.
30. And how much support staff is available for them?
So I run a team of 2 admins, a director of ops and a transaction coordinator. And then we have several in our international team, and employ roughly 6 to 8 virtual assistants at this point. That's
great. Okay. And I think we're going to touch on that because I wrote that in the write-up, that a lot of your transaction management and listing management, once something goes under contract, is done overseas, which brought your costs down considerably.
Yeah, 95% of it is done overseas.
Okay, we're gonna go deeper on that. So let's start with those questions. Okay. Okay, so you left the meeting, or you called me back in a year, and you said, Frank, I think I'm ready to bring on some more agents, and we worked together on that. But what did you do? What's the first thing you did? I mean, what was your realization? Why did it take a year to realize that, I guess?
Well, no, I knew, so when you and I met, it just sounded overwhelming. It just sounded like, okay, that sounds great, but Frank, how am I going to do that? Right. And so when you and I met, we went over, you've got to look at this as 2 separate parts of your business. You have a lead generation business for your buyers and sellers, and you have a lead generation business for your agent attraction. And it was that mind shift that it had to take place for me to really look at it as okay, I've got to build a whole nother department in my team for agent attraction. And so at this point, that's what we did. So it started from creating a separate CRM. So I use something that's not in the real estate space for that, a different workflow for the on and offboarding, running ads in our local market, and really creating value. So the thing that I would say is agents don't want to be recruited. I don't want to be recruited. You don't want to be recruited. So it was really about going into our marketplace and providing value, and people looking at you as that market expert, and seeing what you offer to want to explore it. And so we went in and created, it took us about 6 months, but we went in and created a whole nother department that was strictly on agent attraction. And it has its own budget for lead generation. It has its own person who runs those ads. It's completely different than my real estate team.
So let me ask you this. Why was the answer recruiting more agents when the agents that you had were giving you stress? Why was that the answer?
So the answer is always more agents. I have to just tell you, anybody on there, it's always more agents, because people come and go. Anybody who's building a team right now know that leads are so easy to come by at this point. I mean, leads are a non-issue. So yes, buyer leads, not seller leads. Yes, buyer leads. That's a whole nother topic. But it's having the agents to service them, right? And people move on. I mean, think about a general brokerage, how the attrition rate of people going different places, a team's the same way. So you have to constantly be building that bench. I mean, I think industry standard on a team, when I've looked at it and a lot of the coaching and training I've been through, it's roughly 1.5 transactions per agent per year. I mean, per month. And so if you can look at that of like, okay, well, if I want to hit 500 transactions, I need to have XYZ agents or whatever. And so it really came down to that we needed to attract agents in order to grow, because we had every system in place. It was the exact same to have 4 agents on the team or 40 agents on the team, truthfully.
So it sounds like you shifted a bit from, instead of having this couple of agents high performing, doing lots of deals, you wanted to have many agents doing an average amount, which gave you more stability.
Way more stability. And it made it more of a predictable income. I mean, I still do have some rock stars, but it's not the makeup of my team.
So let me ask you this. So did you adjust your value proposition at all of like, okay, I'm going to go out and go do all this advertising and marketing specific just for agents, which we're going to get into. But what's your offer to an agent that says comes and work for you now generally? Like, why would they come work for you at a discount versus maybe working directly for a broker?
So it depends on where they're at in their career. So a brand new agent, my value proposition, I say we bridge that gap between the solo agent and a brokerage, meaning we all know when you're a solo agent, you go work for a brokerage. Generally, you're one of hundreds that they give you a calendar and say, I hope you show up tomorrow, whereas a team gives you that accountability and the structure and the training that it is like we are mentoring them to get them into a high level of production. So our value proposition for a new agent is I will get you into production. And if you follow up and do exactly what we tell you to do, they can make $100,000 their first year. And we have several people that do that.
And you have several success stories of that.
And that's what I market. So we'll talk about that. Yeah. And so that's one of them. The other component is if you're an experienced agent. I actually have a lot of experienced agents that have joined the team. I just actually had one that was one of my very first hires. She left the team a couple years into her career. She just came back probably 5-6 months ago. She sold 7 homes last month. And so the value proposition, if you're an agent that has production and experience, is we provide leads, provide admin, we provide coaching and support. And one of my partners is a former Tony Robbins speaker. And so we do a lot of like life development, planning and coaching. And that is something that's super attractive to a lot of people too. So it just depends on where they're at in their career.
I think what I want to give the audience is, Spring, where can someone go on Facebook to see the videos and the photos of what you use to find agents and attract them to you?
Yeah, so just even go to my Instagram. It's Spring Bengtzen. My last name is Bengtzen. But I mean, today, even the video I posted is one of my agents. He came in and just slapped down a $5,000 check in front of me the other day. I'm like, what are you doing, dude? And he's like, Spring, I've got goals. And he's like, I got to create some pain and some leverage. So he wrote a $5,000 check to another agent on the team. He's like, if I don't hit my goal at the end of the year, you give him this check. And so I filmed that. But that type of content gets other agents watching, or I'll film and do like an agent testimonial. My Facebook has them as well. And we'll talk about their journey of them becoming a new agent, or their experience with the team, or a funny transaction or whatever. And it just starts giving people insight of what it's really like. I actually have other brokers send people to me. Like I had a call yesterday of like, hey, I have this person who's new, they need you. So I get that a lot of referrals from other brokers, teams, all of that.
When you decided you're in production and you have a couple agents working for you and you're spending all this money on leads and probably some infrastructure support and you're pulled in all these directions, how did you find the time and the mental space to launch like another pillar of realizing I just need to have more agents that do more of an average amount than a few that do a high amount to give you more stability? How did you share with the audience how you did that? Because that's hard.
So it is hard. And it's not the how, it's the who. So if you've ever read that book, the who, not how. And so part of that was you, to be quite honest. It's funny, we're having this
Thank you.
conversation. I signed up for your recruiting class. I think it was 6 months. And so it was every week. So instead of being like, I want this done. And I actually remember when I signed up, it was a 6-month thing. I was like, oh my gosh, Frank, like we can get this done in a month. Why are we
too long? I want it done yesterday.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But that's how. And then I also hired, if you remember, I had my director of ops and I hired a marketing person to execute on my end. So each week we just,
so you cut back on expenses. So what you did is you said, I gotta live on less money. I gotta hire a director of operations to help me execute all this.
Oh yeah.
That was what you did. So you had that money available. And then the next thing, what Spring's referring to is she put together a recruiting plan of 24 specific bricks she had to lay. And every week for 1 hour, she would spend time on executing one thing in the midst of all the chaos.
Yeah.
One thing every week. So in 6 months it was built, and she didn't expect to have it built overnight.
No.
She knew that you had to build the plane while flying it, right, Spring?
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. So we built it over 6 months and it went by fast. I hired a VA to do all the text and stuff. This was a huge thing to me too. And I think I think I can speak to most agents is, you actually said this to me and it's probably one of the most profound, parts of my career. I don't think I've ever shared this with you, but, I had a limiting belief about wanting to teach people, because part of it is you've got to get in front of people and show them what you do. Because once you open up like what you actually do on a team, people, they're like, oh my gosh, I don't want to recreate that. Or, wow, that sounds difficult. Or, oh my gosh, that's a huge value proposition. And I was like, oh, you want me to do what? You want me to host a 3-hour workshop and put it all over Facebook and get people in our market? And you said this to me. You said, Spring, here's the thing. Know your audience. Like Frank Klesitz, I'm not going to come to your class, like, because I'm not your audience. I don't need it. But you will attract who your audience is, and it needs to your content. And from there on, I was like, you're right. Like, I'm providing a value. Whoever's showing up to this wants to hear and learn what I have to say. And so it just gave me that confidence of like, just get out there and show people what you're doing. And if you can provide even one thing of value in that 3 hours, it's a win, And that opened up that we do a ton of trainings, a lot of workshops. So how we attract people is, again, we don't recruit, we attract. We just put out a lot of content about who we are, events that we're hosting, masterminds that we're doing. And ultimately people are usually like, hey, I want to be in the world.
People can see all this on your Instagram of what you're doing, right?
Instagram, Facebook, YouTube.
What's your Facebook?
We have it out there. Spring Bengtzen.
Just on your personal name.
Yeah, so I do it on my personal, because most people on their realtors. I do have a business page that is named Spring Bengtzen. That was a strategy you and I came up with that I run ads for recruiting. So only reason I have that page is so it looks like it's coming as a post from me in their newsfeed, but it's a sponsored ad of a video or something. So I target the realtor demographic that I believe would be a good fit for my team with sponsored ads. When I say their ads are not, hey, come work with me, they're like success stories or inviting them to a class or a knowledge bomb. It's nothing like branded, even it's branded with my team information and my brokerage information, but it's not a, hey, this is what we offer, come work here.
I think there's some interesting insights I want to take this milestone in the interview to share. Is when you were dealing with the pain points at the start of this interview, there's essentially you, a couple of assistants, and a bunch of rock star agents, and you in production. And you're like, this isn't working. So you were fortunate to have the extra money from your own production of more you had to spend because you really want to keep more for yourself.
Yeah.
To hire a more senior manager as opposed to a couple of assistants. And you put the assistants under the manager.
Yes.
Essentially.
Yeah. I mean, at that time, yes and yes. My business has changed dramatically now. Like
but at the time, that's how you did it, because you couldn't have all these assistants reporting to you on more of a low level thinking.
No.
Okay.
Yes, you're
Got it.
exactly right. Yep.
So you brought
Yes.
on somebody higher skilled that has managerial experience and you poured everything into them to teach them everything out of your head to give to lower skilled labor. And then on top of that, you realized I need to have more agents that do an average amount of deals than a few that do a whole bunch.
Yes.
So you decided to start a whole new pillar to your business, like just like you set up probably your lead generation for buyers and sellers into a CRM like Real Geeks.
Yep.
What you did is you got a whole separate CRM, which could be anything, any CRM out there,
Yep.
but it's separate. And you said, I'm going to start bringing in, I think what I actually shared with you, and I'll share this with everyone here the customer life cycle stages in HubSpot.
Yes.
So if you Google HubSpot customer life cycle stages, which is HubSpot's a very kind of inbound content funnel marketing software. And it talks about how the first stage is a subscriber, then it's a lead, then it's a marketing qualified lead and a sales qualified lead. I know I'm speaking at a high level here of stages, but
Yep.
You're like, oh my gosh, that's exactly the path of a B2B sale of
Yep.
bringing in an agent. Whereas your other CRM for buyers and sellers was B2C, a little bit different model, right?
Yep. Yep.
Cool. All right. So what you just alluded to now is like, okay, I need to go build this buyer and this agent attraction funnel. And you were freaking out, is what you were saying.
Well, it just sounds
Because-
exhausting.
yeah.
It's exhausting unless you break it down. Like,
Yeah. Well, you were very afraid of what credibility do I have to teach? And you
In the
were
market.
looking at, you were looking at what you were sharing here was your credibility is not judged by your competitors or your peers, it's
Yep.
judged by the audience. And I asked you
Yep.
at the time, like, Spring, how many homes did you and your team sell? Like 6 years, like 150?
yeah,
It's still a
150,
lot.
200. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's still a lot.
You were
I was the
still
number one
perfectly
team.
qualified. I was like, if
Yeah,
you sell 20 homes a year, you're qualified, 25.
I think a drunk monkey, like we all, like, you see, like, there's people crushing it, selling thousands, right? And so the circles I was playing in and stuff, like, I was the small fish of 150, 200 homes. But in the reality of our local market, we were one of the bigger, and I do know what we're doing, you know?
Mhm.
So yeah, it was just getting over that thought process around it. But
So one of the things that we talked about was I said, hey, Spring, you should become the journalist of what you're doing on the team.
Yeah.
Become the journalist to become the teacher of everything you're doing so they understand how much freaking work it is to run a real estate team, right?
yeah. Yeah.
So you taught your first workshop, you taught a 3-hour business planning clinic to help all the agents in Salt Lake City, where you're based out of, just north of Salt Lake,
Yep.
to like write a business plan. Tell us how that went and how you got butts and seats for that.
Yeah. So again, so it was part of our recruiting strategy. So we did a 3-hour business planning clinic. We opened it up. We basically went through the customer life cycle on the real estate perspective, from attracting the client, capturing them, to what CRMs, to nurturing them, to the process that the Utah Life agent does from a buyer presentation, like the steps, all of that. So contract to close, and then the repeat referral with viral. So I basically broke it down of like, this is exactly what we use. This is how we do it. And to get people there, we created an Eventbrite, sponsored ads on Facebook, made some posts, did some videos, and we packed the room several times. People
That's
just
crazy.
yeah. Well, the cool thing is I mean, I would attend something like that. I would want to know what other people that are doing a large volume. I mean, you think about it. I've paid to fly to Jeff Cohn's office. I've gone to Dan Beer's stuff. I've done a ton of different, because I'm like, there's always a nugget that you can take. So we will end up putting on an Eventbrite and sponsoring out ads, and people show up, and it's not a pitch. It's just a business planning clinic. But what it did is people would be like, oh my gosh, that was awesome. I don't want to reinvent the wheel. How do I get in business with you? Or if I had a potential new recruit, I'd actually tell them, hey, if you want a glimpse into our business, come. In fact, the one I was just talking about on Instagram, where the $5,000, I actually met him at that time and said, hey, you know what? Why don't you come to this business clinic? You can see what our vibe is, and then we'll go from there. And that's how I recruited him. So that's what we've done. We've changed it over the years to just different things. Like we'll do masterminds with panels. I'm going to do one in, I've done a Love Your Life Summit, which is more of a life planning that we've packed the house with 200 plus people. But we're going to do one in November that's more of a business planning clinic. Yeah, so we just switch it up and provide value, and then people ultimately will show up.
So one of the first things that you did, I want to clarify that, is like, okay, I have a separate CRM. I have to go after agents. I have to have a reason to reach out to them. I have the reason to run ads. And you set aside 3 hours to walk them through 5 or 6 things. I'm going to share with you everything that we do to generate buyer and seller leads. I'm going to share with you everything we do to convert those people long-term into appointments. I'm going to teach you how to go on those appointments, buyer and seller, and get contracts signed, buyers, agency, or listing contracts. I'm going to show you exactly how we list the property at the maximum exposure and how we kind of have a little competitive advantage, maybe how we list a home versus other agents. I'm going to show you the whole transaction management process to make sure that runs smoothly without getting sucked into that. And then once the deal actually closes, we're going to talk about getting reviews and how I stay in touch for repeat and referrals. And I'm going to open up my entire business to you. Would you like to come? And people signed up.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. Perfect.
Cool. Great.
Yeah.
So we won't go much for the sake of time. What Spring basically did is she started her own coaching company, really. And what she's selling on the back end is, instead of paying for coaching, it's for joining the team. And you can go on her Facebook and you can see everything there of what she's putting out to all the agents in the area. And they come to her events, and from there they come to one-on-one meetings, and you figure out what's best for them. Right.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
But
exactly.
So operations manager, separate pillar for recruiting, and you have to start teaching and training probably around the idea of teaching workshops around helping your fellow agents that aren't as successful as you to do so. Right.
Right.
But the thing that you also shared earlier is that all this cost money, and the money had to come from somewhere. That's not you just working harder or borrowing it.
Yes.
And you found that you can get more efficiencies by getting a lot of your administrative labor overseas. Would you share that aha and how much that changed the economics of your business when you realized that?
I'm giggling inside, Frank, because I feel like this is a Frank, well, Frank helped me with this, but okay. So I went to a mastermind. Yes. This is the funniest part. Okay. So I went to a mastermind in San Diego with some of the top agents in the country, but you put it on probably about 2 years ago, right?
2 years ago.
And yeah, there was a gentleman there that his whole, he had 5 offices that pretty much everything was virtual assistants except for one person. And it was an aha, because I'd had VAs in the past, but we approached them incorrectly. We didn't treat them like they were just sitting right there, and it was cheap, out of sight, out of mind. It was not a good experience. And fast forward though, I was like, man, when you really dive in and you create this as a business, I look at my expenses every week, and I run a P&L, and I look at that P&L every month with my finance, right? And the number one cost is labor, is employees, right? And to provide that value for your agents and for the customer, there's a lot that goes into it. And my aha around it was that the people in the Philippines or India or wherever you're going to hire them are quality. They just
very quality.
Yes. They just have a different dollar that they need to make, different their quality of lifestyle could be just as much. It just doesn't cost as much. And so we started transitioning into a full international team, is what we call it, and hiring for pretty much everything. I do have a director of ops that's in-house. She is at this point my right hand, and she's the one who hires and trains these guys. And I do have a transaction coordinator that is legally licensed in the state of Utah for anything that we need a real estate license for. But everything else is with a virtual assistant, down to our social media.
Let's break it down. How many people, how many international people do you have?
I honestly don't know at this point. I know that sounds horrible because Sarah handles it all, but I would say between 6 and 8. I have people making phone calls. Two outbound
Inbound or
callers
outbound?
for outbound, two outbound callers for purchasing their home, cash offers.
Mhm.
I have two in on the transaction and listing side. I have one that's specifically for recruiting only, that does outbound text, some calls, and invites them to events. And then I have two that are just admin. So
What's the rate that you pay?
it depends. I think we're paying $3 to $6 an hour, just dependent upon the role that they do. Like I have a gentleman that pulls lists so that my agents have who they're going to reach out to every day, or pulls distress data. I mean, we've got pretty much the whole back end is really dialed in with people in the Philippines.
And do you hire direct or you go through a recruiting company?
So we hire direct. I mean, again, I'm going to sound ignorant. This is again the who, not the how. I have the right who. So she goes in and hires. And the thing that I've learned from her, and Frank, you have experience in this, is it comes down to the hiring process. So we get a video, we get the resume, we get their disc, and then takes them through a group interview. And then once we hire them, I think this is a number one mistake I was making before, is somehow I just expected them to know, like, oh, you have transaction experience. And it was an aha of like, we wouldn't just hire a new employee sitting next to me that couldn't ask questions, or that we weren't having them shadow us to do it. And so when we onboard a new virtual assistant, we will have them Zoom in for a week, and they're just on Zoom and we're working and we're showing them so they can learn the tasks, and then we go from there. So there's a lot of accountability too, of check-ins, and it's not just out of sight, out of mind. And I think that's where I really screwed up in the past with it. And I think a lot of people do screw up still with it.
I think one of the best investments anyone could do listening to this is to go book a flight to Manila in the Philippines and just go spend a week.
Yeah.
And you'll feel like you're in America. You'll feel like you're in Vegas, actually, because the whole town lights up at night, because that's when everyone's working for overseas, and it's calm during the day. And everyone speaks darn near excellent English. It's English everywhere. Everyone's brought up in English.
Yeah.
And you'll start understanding the culture differently and realize, man, everyone's equal.
Yeah.
That's how I should treat everyone equally. That was the big aha for you. Then not just some cog, but like, I got to treat this person as like an equal, and Zoom and video conferencing has all been done there. And you brought something else up. So I think another big takeaway here is Spring had to figure out where to get the money to finance the growth to do 450 deals. And it was through putting where the money wanted to, investing the money in the marketing, the lead generation, and the American managers, and through the use of virtual assistants. Our enterprise, what I have, we have about 25, and they're excellent. Civil engineer, Spring, the civil engineer oversees all the construction projects. We have a CPA managing all the financing. Yep. We have somebody that worked for Deloitte that does financial forecasting for cash flows, that is available to you if you take the foreign labor seriously and you use that to lever up your administrative staff, your stateside people. Mm-hmm. But there's something you also shared too on your path to get to how to do 450 deals in a year is, okay, you're hiring these agents, you have to onboard them. Okay, you're hiring all the staff, you have to onboard them. How do you do that? How did you figure that problem out? Yeah, because that's exhausting.
So onboarding, so I have a director of ops that handles all of the operation sides. She does the onboarding. That is her role. Agent wise, at this point, I have a director of sales. So what we do for our onboarding is I take everybody through what's called Hello Week. It's technically Hell Week with an O, to see how they're going to show up. Like, I know, but like the thing about,
did you make that up, or did you hear that?
No, I made it up.
That's
I was
really
like, good. Yeah, thank you. Copy it, everybody. Like, but the thing is like agents come in and they have all this excitement and stuff, but we all know like it's different than what they think. So the opportunity to get them in the environment, and if they can't show up week one with excitement and like, I'm going to go for it, then it's just not going to happen. So it's nothing crazy, but we do have the standards that we put them through that first week. once they make it through Hello Week, which not everybody does.
And what do they have to do to pass Hello Week? Show up?
No, so they have to show up on time, go to all the huddles, all the meetings. They need to provide their first list of 200 of their SOI, reach out to all of them, do an open house, and contact Circle Prospect 150 people around that open house. So I know it is a little bit of a lot, but not really if you have 8 hours in a day. Like, it's not. So
Who's walking them through all that? Who's coaching them through and getting them all set up?
So we have it set up that an automatic email goes out that Thursday before.
All online, all self-service, all videos?
Yeah. So everything is set up that way. They do come in the office and we do meet with them and say, here it is, but they're prepared prior. So we set them up with a dialer, not a triple line, just the one line that they can like make their calls so we can have them recorded. We have all that ready to go for that Monday. So they have through that weekend to do their open house and everything. They make it through Hello Week, then we onboard them. And again, we have everything emailed, automated out. And so we take them through day by day each system. So our CRM, CSU, all of that, and get them that first week of completely onboarded. And then what we do is we have a mentor program. So our senior agents that are in production, a high level production, can make a 5% override by mentoring a new agent. So we assign them a mentor based off behavioral and personality, and that person becomes who does their one-on-ones, and along with us, we'll help them. And then they plug into our coaching and training, and we offer script and role play a few times a week. We do a foundations training, which is mandatory for the first 12 weeks. I mean, we have it pretty dialed. So there is a process to it, but we have it really streamlined at this point.
If you guys have a chance, there was an interview that I conducted one-on-one with Greg Harrelson, the previous Keeping It Real. So I think if you look at the very last Keeping It Real that we did, I spent time with Greg on just literally for the whole hour, actually it was longer than that, how you onboard an agent. And he has the separate tracks, the online training, just filter them in. We call it an audition. You have to audition for a week. You call it Hello Week. I like that. Yep. But before I invest any resources in you, I have to see if you actually will show up to the meetings as your independent contractor. And I have to actually see if you're going to make calls. If you can successfully do that, we'll take it to the next level. But I'm not investing any resources into you until you can show me you can show up to a meeting and it's on Zoom. Okay.
Yep.
Or, okay.
Yeah.
And then can you actually make phone calls?
Yeah.
Right. It's great.
Yep.
And then who built all the systems for the onboarding of all the virtual assistants? I'm training them up from scratch for all the operational parts.
So my director of ops is building out the systems I'm sure there's still things that need to happen, but for the virtual assistants, and it's been a work in progress. It didn't happen overnight. Like our onboarding processes and systems, we use CSU for. They have a agent one and they have a recruiting platform. And so we use the recruiting platform, and you can build out, it's basically like a monday.com or a Trello board that has from the initial appointment to them going through their first 90 days is what I have built out. So we have the checklist and who does what of a VA in there, and it just automatically sends the reminders or the tasks and stuff. So, and that honestly has come from masterminding with other agents of things that they've done and that we've implemented, and vice versa. I'm happy to share it with anybody if they want the checklist that we have. I'm happy to
what checklist is it?
Help them with that. So how we onboard an agent. So
I would love to see that. If you send that to me.
Yep.
I like to pin that to the top of the YouTube comments.
Yeah.
So Springs agent onboarding checklist.
Just their first steps, even from like getting their brokerage paperwork in, their team agreement signed,
all the HR stuff,
everything down to like their first 90 days. Like, I mean, it's all like.
And what system do you use that the agent goes into to manage?
So this one's actually for our ops. We use CSU. So CSU has a recruiting platform that we use for ops, that we manage what needs to happen. For the agent to know what they need to do, we have it built out in Asana, and it's just because I've had it in there forever. And also we give them an onboarding booklet that they bring to each one of their one-on-ones, but we're keeping track of it in CSU.
Now, to do 450 deals this year, you have to have leads. So I would assume that there's some type of lead promise with the people on your team. How do you generate them? And how do you do it cost effectively of outlaying the money to do it that you can do it profitably?
So we have several different lead sources, from Google AdWords to Zillow to Opcity to Ojo Labs to HomeLight to Circle Prospecting. We have VA. I mean, we have a bunch. So the way that it works on my team is not everybody has every lead source. So you can track in the back end of Sisu the amount of leads that came in, the cost of it, and then the conversion ratio per agent. So I can see what is making sense to give to specific agents. So there's some that are very heavy on Zillow. There's some that are very heavy on AdWords or ISA leads or whatnot. And so, and I charge differently. So for example, like a Zillow lead is a completely different cost as an agent split than let's say an AdWord lead. Because an AdWord lead, let's say it's $12 for the lead. A Zillow lead is going to cost me anywhere from $250, $300 for the lead. So we have a different split based off of that. And I have had it before where agents been like, I just don't understand, why are you charging me more for this? And I'll pull out the report. And I'm like, let me show you. So you've received this many thousands of dollars in leads. This is what you closed. This is what I've made. This is what you've made. And when they see that and it's black and white, it takes all of the emotion out of it. So
here's how much I spent. Here's what I gave you. Here's what you got out of it.
Yes. Yes. And it makes the conversation of like, hey, why am I not getting these leads? Well, let me show you your conversion ratio of what's been going on. So when you can convert at one that's in your pipeline, I'll turn you back on. But I've just spent $18,000 of giving you these leads without any ROI. So
curious. You see many different models. Leads coming in, buy and sell leads from all sources. Some go to better agents than others, depending upon the source. Are they all going directly to the agent, or do you have someone full-time hourly working them to send it to the agent?
Both. So I do have an ISA who is amazing on some of them. I do also on the Zillow leads, I do have them going into like it's not a round robin, but just a broadcast, and whoever gets them on those. So it just depends. My intention though, Frank, is to get it to where we run an ISA department with more than we're in the process of hiring, and we get away from just giving the agents the leads. I mean, their lack of follow-up is just mind-numbing. So the Zillow ones converted higher and it makes sense, but the rest of them, really, we're having them go to the ISA department.
Yeah. There's an interview that we did on Keeping It Real with Dave Friedman, and I would go watch that. They all scrub through constant follow-up, and just the appointment set. The appointment is set. And then if it's missed, they follow up right away for the appointment. So, so the question is like, with an agent, how much value do you give them, but just lowers and lowers their splits?
Mm-hmm.
And for the business where you probably want the most control, in my opinion, as much as you can to control as much as you can through the pipeline. So I have the feeling you might be going further with the ISA model. Greg would disagree. And say, oh, it goes to the agents. But then again, he might have different lead sources, what you're writing checks for, right? I think it depends upon how expensive the leads are and if they're doing a good job of them.
Yeah, there's a lot of ways to do this business, but for me right now, we're moving more towards the ISA model.
Yeah. So let's talk about some costs. So you have this operational manager that systematized everything, that got your labor costs down for certain roles by going overseas. You decide to create a whole separate CRM. Go check out HubSpot free CRM as a separate CRM just for that. It's great, but anyone's fine. It just needs to be separate, and it needs to probably be the spine of it built for more of a B2B type selling. Got it? Then you started teaching and training all the agents in the area, and people started coming into you. And you put together onboarding systems that could onboard an agent fairly quickly and weed out ones in a week of ones that you shouldn't spend time with, so they didn't exhaust you, right? Allow those to prove themselves correctly. All of this led to, where do I find more money to finance this operation? Got it? and you had to look at your brokerage. Talk to us about that.
In which regards, Frank? What do you mean?
Well, in many ways. I mean, brokers cost money. You have to pay a broker in some way. Some brokerages
Yeah.
provide support. Some
Yeah.
brokerages don't provide support. Some brokerages are supportive of a team model. Some brokerages aren't supportive of a team model. I just want to hear your choice of, we're
What
looking
I chose
at,
to do.
what you chose to do.
Yeah. So, gosh, this is a journey. So I was at Keller Williams for 10 plus years. I had it in my mind that if I created my own brokerage, because people weren't leaving Spring, they were leaving the team, right? So I'm like, I'm going to go create my own brokerage that when they transition from the team, they can still be in the brokerage and we'll still recoup that we've trained them and they're still in our world and we can make something. So I went and opened up a Realty One franchise, which was great. Love the company, nothing negative to say. However, when I got into it, I'm like, man, coming from Keller Williams to the flat fee structure, completely different. And when I started really analyzing the numbers, I'm like, this is going to take me a lot of agent attraction for the brokerage, not for the team, for the brokerage to make the amount of money that I want this to make. And you would think like, yes, I ran the performance. I knew what I was getting into. And I originally, to your point, Frank, was looking at it as like, cool, I'll just make this additional for my team. It'll be a wash. The extra in the brokerage will be great. But once you get into it, you're like, well, if I'm going to have another business, then why am I playing small just for this team? Like, let's go. And so when I started analyzing it and being like, well, if I let's go and make it happen, what do these numbers equate out to? And then for me, it was like,
I want to step in really quick. Your recruiting marketing was going so well.
Yes.
Okay. That you got it. And you were able to use published content, put your company out there, and you were having all these agents come to you, but like you were only able to serve a sliver of the market on your team.
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly. So, I mean, just to give you guys a perspective, so I opened up my office March, I think first was my soft opening date, and then COVID hit March 14th. In that 9 months of I attracted over 100 agents to my brokerage, which is great during COVID in whatever. And it was 100% off of what I just told you guys about of having classes, providing value. And people are like, whoa, this is something fresh. This isn't my typical brokerage training. How do I get into your world? So it wasn't that it wasn't successful, but when I started really analyzing it, I'm like, is this what I really want to do? But do I really want to own a brokerage, be responsible for this? Or do I want to look at a model that makes more sense for me? And so I started.
Did you have to pay the cost of a broker before?
Yes, on the team.
So you had the operations person and the broker then.
Oh yeah. Mm-hmm.
That's another expense.
Yeah, I mean, but you have to think, so like when I was at a traditional brokerage, I was paying a cap, right? So I was like, I'm going to eliminate the cap. I'm going to take it all. I'll pay the broker. I'll pay the person. But yes, the expenses were there. So I ultimately made the decision. I'm like, with COVID hitting and seeing where the model was going, I'm like, I got to look into this virtual brokerage model, because I felt like what I loved about it was that it was virtual. I also loved that the model was really about everybody growing together, the collaborative vibe of everybody helping each other. So I ultimately made the decision probably 75 days ago that we joined Real Broker simply because of the model made sense for me. And
why does it make sense specifically for you? What's the uniqueness of why it's for you versus all the other options out there?
Okay, so a couple of key components. One, from the team perspective, forget anything else. The team perspective, the cap was very attractive, and the cap was attractive for my team members. On top of that, like to give off the liability and the headache of the broker and the support expense from the company. That's what I'm saying. To give off all of that liability and headache was 1000% worth it. The other thing is my business model, I plan to expand. So I plan to expand throughout the state of Utah. I'm in just this little county bubble. So I'm going to go open up some expansion teams in my state. And by doing so, I don't have to have like who owns the market center or who's the RD and all the politics. It's one cap for the entire country. And so it just made sense to just get rid of all of that minutia of, I'm going to put an agent, now I have to put them in your market center and pay your cap and all your fees. It's just one, which was awesome. And then honestly, Frank, like from what you have taught me over the years of agent attraction, I just thought, I'm bigger than this 20-mile radius, and I want to provide value for other people, and I want to grow with people. And this model allows us to do that. And so the revenue share component really made sense for me.
You hit what I see as the core third rail of disruption, which is geography doesn't matter.
Yeah.
When we, on the side, I have a real estate investing business. The only person I have in the market is a minimum wage runner with a camera, and everything else is in the cloud.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think
that's money. I mean, you think about it, like, I mean, with everything virtual, I mean, right now you're in Tennessee, I'm in Utah, like it doesn't, you don't have to be in this little bubble. And so I think we to just be, I just felt like I was trapped of like, we have 2,000 agents. And if I got 10% market share, it's 200. And I was like, no way, like there's a whole world out there. So let's go blow it up and have fun with it, know?
That's great.
Yeah, it's super fun.
Okay. So again, the promise of this interview is how to sell 450 homes.
Agent attraction.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's the big takeaway is that operations manager, virtual assistant team, really getting serious with your brokerage that they're going to support that level of production cost effective wise for you to recruit.
Yep.
And you have to start a second business on a second CRM, teaching business planning workshops and publishing pictures and content of becoming the journalist of what you're doing to sell real estate to attract more people to you.
Yeah, I think some of it too is a little bit of a shift. Like who's your audience? As a team owner, like you have two clients. You have the agent that you're trying to attract, and then you have the home buyer or seller. I will tell you, my social media is very much directed towards an agent that I'm attracting or that I want to be in business with, instead of that homeowner consumer of let me sell your home. I feel like my lead generation brings that in from all the different aggregates and stuff that my audience, who, if you ask me what business I'm in the coaching and training business of agents. And that's how we grow our team.
And it took you about a year to realize that I want to become a coach and trainer of agents when we first pitched the concept, right?
Yeah. And just so you guys know, like, I mean, I probably will get more into that coaching space. I'm going to do some workshops coming up here, but I'm not a true like coach. I'm not doing one-on-one coaching with Sally in St. George or whatever about something, but I am for my agents that work on my team, and our job is to get them into a high level of production. And so the reason I say that is I think a lot of people listening to this right now will probably like, oh, well, I'm not a coach, or don't want to be. You have to be a coach to your agents. Like you have to be putting it out there and in your local market that you're an expert.
What other questions do you guys have for Spring? For those of you who are watching, feel free to use the chat here on YouTube and ask me if you want. Kevin McCarty says, love the transparency and sharing data. Hey, Kevin, with your team. Using that to managing to data. One of the things that we did is if you ever call in viral, everyone says you're calling, I'm speaking to you on a recorded line.
Yep.
So all of the calls for all of our customers are recorded. And then they go to the Philippines overnight and they're listened to and they're scored to scorecards. And our stand-up meetings the next morning, we go over the quantitative and qualitative communication, meaning is the client getting enough communication from you? And then after listening to it, is it quality? And the number one thing I look for in quality of communication is you reference the previous communication following up on it. Somebody wrote a really good book. If you have a chance to go purchase Mike Ferry's book, it's about $80 on his website on how to coach agents. It's one of the best books I've ever read on how to coach and train somebody. And he said in his 40 years of building a coaching company, the number one issue is like his coaches don't reference the previous call. And once you reference the previous meeting, it like just changes the game on the quality of the communication.
Interesting. Okay. Yeah. I'm going to go buy that.
So you can literally hire somebody overseas for quality assurance, QA team, to listen to all the call recordings when your coach is talking to your agents.
Mhm.
saying, did you thoroughly reference the milestones and the objectives and what they talked about last time and where they are today? Not just like, oh, hey, what do you want to talk about today?
Yeah. So this is good feedback too. So we use Sisu, which is like the dashboard and stuff. So every one of our one-on-ones, we pull it up and we look at their activities of what they did for the week, what their goal
It's very
was, what they
data
actually
driven.
performed. Everything in my life is data driven
When
because
did you make
here's
that
the
shift?
thing.
When did you make the shift to managing by data and not just Tony Robbinsing everyone all the time?
Oh, it's been a while. I mean, I think once we actually had the data, like when we actually had the platform. So when we moved to Sisu, so it's been probably about 3 years. I mean, don't get me wrong, I still have a little Tony in there here and there, but it is very data driven because at the end of the day, I love everybody. Like if you made it to my world, I like you. So, but I'm not doing you any favors by just liking you. So I've actually had to have that conversation with a few of my agents and be like, I cannot love you out of this business. Like I enjoy you in my life, but you're not making any money. So we've got to figure out where the disconnect is. And so we'll dive into the data. And if they're going on a lot of appointments, but they're not converting, then we'll have that conversation. Or maybe they're not talking to enough people. I mean, that's a whole nother topic, but we run our business 100% off of what data we have.
That's good. I'm trying to think what else somebody wants to know on how to sell 450 homes. You tell me. Just kind of sum up, like, you know your business better than anyone else. Like, what are like the top one or two things that are always on your mind when you strip away all the distractions that has led you to be able to do, let's say, 450 homes this year?
So number one is agent attraction. So we have to have enough agents to
Do it.
get the numbers we want. And then the second component is that we hit on a lot is the coaching and training. So like if you asked me, and when I say coaching and training, I mean coaching and training them into production. Leads are a dime a dozen at this point. We all know that. So that's not hard to get. You just have to have money for it. But if you have the leads and your agents aren't trained and you're not holding them accountable to what it takes, then you're just wasting your money.
Someone asked a question if he knew where that Mike Ferry book is. I think he has a store on his website. I hope he still sells it. I don't know why he sold that.
I actually remember you telling me about it.
It was directly training all of
it.
his competition. And it was so
I think
good.
I have it.
It's so good. You might have to ask around, maybe like a Mike Ferry group. It might be on his website, but it's a book he wrote literally on how to coach agents after 40 years in the business at the time.
I'm going to plug my computer in just in case. Sorry.
Yeah. So
I think you told me to buy that book in the past. I need to try to find it and see.
Mm-hmm. You guys have any other questions that you guys would like to ask Spring before we conclude the interview today? I think I had some really good takeaways.
Thanks,
Very
Frank.
good
Thanks
operations
for having
manager.
Me.
Yeah.
Well,
train people, all that good stuff.
Yeah, I owe you for that one too. I would just tell everybody on this, like, I always laugh and like Frank's like the boy genius in real estate. So if he offers, I'm serious. If he offers like a class, I don't know if you're even still doing it, you're recruiting one, sign up. Like you guys should sign up for it. And if you have an opportunity to go to a mastermind, go to the mastermind. Like I would say a big component of my growth has come that I put myself in environments that for the longest time, Frank, I was a little fish in the room.
Yeah.
I mean, I was
and I would say that with Spring is that how much money have you spent going to all those Tony Robbins events and all this? Oh my God, hundreds of thousands.
I still spend, I have several coaches, different aspects of my life from NLP to business to the investment side. Like I'm a believer of your number one asset is yourself. So, and somebody out there has done it before I have. And so it's finding that person, like even prior to this, I'm like, Frank, I know you've done this, help me with it. And it's because why reinvent the wheel? Like go find a mentor or a coach or somebody who's willing to share. And this world, especially real estate, is very abundant. I believe like you can get on Google or YouTube and find anything you want. Like people like myself are sharing exactly what we're doing. So it's just the execution component of it.
And Real Geeks does a good job with that. So Real Geeks brings Greg and I on to do really in-depth interviews in a larger scope here on Keeping It Real. You can go to keepingitreal.com to watch all the previous replays. We do the show for 6 years. But also, if you're a customer of Real Geeks, which much of the reporting, you can also get some of the similar reporting in that system as well, along with CISU. But if you're a customer of Real Geeks, you also get additional coaching and training from all these top agents. So it's not the product people teaching you. It's like, here are the actual agents using it. And dive into this stuff if you can't afford to go fly and be in the room. It's available online. Listen to a car, fly around, or driving around, let it soak up into your mind. Therese asks, I came in way late, so I apologize if you said this earlier. What type of trainings were you doing that was attracting agents? Why don't you answer that question more clearly again? Types of trainings you do that attract agents.
So now, so I originally started with the business planning clinic that we talked about, the 3-hour. I would also offer at first, offered a career night, which I don't remember, we called it something different. But it was basically for a new agent to understand what the like the difference between a brokerage and a team and why you would choose. So it was very formal in that sense. And then we do a ton of trainings. So now we'll do masterminds. We'll bring in other agents. We'll do top panel masterminds for different things. We'll do business planning. We'll do some Tony Robbins type of stuff. We'll do internet lead conversion. Last week was door knocking on purpose, with a purpose. So how to get the data, what to say, all of that kind of stuff. And so what I'll normally do as well is I'll bring in other people. So it's not just the spring show. I'll find other people in my market that would love to, or even just in my real network, I'll reach out and say, hey, who's a master at this that'd be willing to teach a class? And then I run the ads for it. I'm there, I'll introduce them, and then I'll have them do that component of it, their teaching segment.
Good. Great. Well, normally I have overtime with Greg, but Greg wasn't able to make it today. No worries at all. Hopefully you guys had a good interview and you enjoyed the spring. Thanks so much for your stuff. Make sure to send me those onboarding documents, and I want to pin those to the top of the YouTube comments. So this replay is available. So if you're watching this live on YouTube, once we're done, it'll render here and you can watch it right on YouTube. And again, like I said, you can go to keepingitreal.com and watch all the replays, watch an Apple Podcasts, and Real Geeks will do a good job putting this out there for you. But Spring, thank you very much. We are all done. I'll let you get on with your day to your road to 450.
Thank you. Have a